Hi guys, I'm back here again, and I made a few updates to this chart, and the last chart that I used like this, I realized that I had a couple of goofs in it, right over here, particularly in the covenant calendar here. I double checked everything. Everything still seems to be on par, but I did have to make a few changes because I accidentally messed up my sequence right here in the calendar below, and that kind of threw everything off, but it's still worth to look at it because the reasoning is this. This study is kind of focused on Zacharias and Elizabeth, and there's talk that he could be a Zadok or a Melchizedek type of priest himself. But I think he was compelled to follow the lunar calendar simply because Yahusha said it himself in the days of his ministry that not one of them followed the Torah, and they all sealed up the key to understanding. And I think the key to understanding is actually the Mazaroth, the signs of the preparations in the heavens, and also the true calendar and how to count the days of the years. Of course, they were messed up ever since the Babylonian captivity, and they inherited these traditions of following after the moon for the timing of the Moedim. But they were trying to do the best they could because they just lost their way, And actually, this is the reason why Yahusha is going to come back in our day and have to deal with them once again to set things right. And then, of course, the millennial reign. So, over here to the left, you'll see over here in the lunar 3 BC. You'll see here the first Shabbat starts out the first priestly course of the year, and how I got it all marked, and all the priests would serve when Passover would start here on the 30th. They would all start here, and this would with the 3 feasts, the 3 weeks in the year, that would actually make up for the other few weeks that are lost at the end of the year, because you got 24 priests. They each do 2 courses a year, plus they all help in the 3 weeks of the fall feast and the spring feast. You follow? Everybody would take part in the ministrations because there were so many people in Jerusalem. It would take basically everybody to help with the priestly ministrations, the sacrificial system, and oblation, and all of that, peace offerings and everything that had to occur in order to atone for their sin, right? So if you go down, we're looking for the course of Abijah. I spelled it Avia here, and that would be the 8th course according to Leviticus 23. And after that, this would be the course of Zacharias overseen, and his course started on about noon on the Sabbath day, and it would end on the Sabbath day of the 25th. So he would serve in a temple, and this is when he's seen the angel, and he was dumb. When he came out of the temple, he was dumb, and he wasn't able to speak. So there's a problem here, because Shavuot just happened to be on the 26th, that following day. It would be a Sunday as we know it, but the first day of the week. And then I figured this is when he returned back to Hebron. Hebron's like 13 miles away. So I'm just thinking, how old was Zacharias at this time? Was he, say, 50 years old? He could probably easily make that journey in one day, probably even a half a day. Even if he had a mule or an ass, he could probably make that journey along with his other companions pretty easily in a day. That's just an assumption on my part. I figure I'm kind of good for one or two, because if everybody else can inject an Antichrist into Daniel 9:27, I can make an assumption here. That's a whole other story. So I'll continue. So if the wave sheaf offering was here on the 26th, he would have returned back to Hebron on the 27th of May. And you'll see how the calendar of Melchizedek does not really line up with that. It's actually like a week later that the wave sheaf would have been offered. And I don't see how that would work out very good. And I really don't think that Zacharias would have been following this calendar, because as far as I know, the only one that really did was John the Baptist and Yahusha himself. And they were basically the only ones in Israel at that time that actually did. So the calendar of Melchizedek almost needs to be looked at, so we can see the differences and see how it would not line up with Zacharias. Now, I'm not trying to force this or anything, but it just makes more sense to me that Zacharias is following the lunar calendar. So the wave sheaf on the lunar calendar would be on April 7th. That would converge, making Shavuot May 26th. A one-day celebration, according to Leviticus 23:21. Zachariah and Elizabeth would return to Hebron on the 27th and conceives John the Baptist. Zacharias most likely was compelled to observe the lunar calendar. That's my argument. And if you can prove me wrong, I mean, please do. Iron sharpens iron, right? So you'll see up here how the Passover fell on the 30th here. Then you count the 7 days of unleavened bread. And there's no statute or anything that says that the wave sheaf offering has to be within the 7 or 8 day period. It's just the way how the moon falls that particular year, because it's basically all over the place. And there's one other thing I need to show you down here on how those days would have looked. So right here in the middle, I got the end of March, the 30th and 31st. And I put this down. This here would be the Passover. That's on a Saturday. 7th day, if you want to call it that, cycle. And then the cycle starts over on the 31st. This would have been the first day of Unleavened Bread. And I marked it in the middle of the night at midnight so that we know that we're looking at a Gregorian calendar here. And down here on the bottom, I put the Jews' lunar calendar. And I show you how Passover begins at even. And it runs for a 24-hour cycle, which it's not supposed to. It's only supposed to be 12. But I'll continue. And then first day of Unleavened Bread, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. And there's a 12-hour gap right here, because the wave sheaf is supposed to be offered during the morning. Alright, let's go down here, and I did the same thing. And I showed you what it's supposed to really look like if they followed the Torah correctly. The day would start at dawn with the 12 hours of preparation, 12 hours of a Passover. They would have the lamb or the bull or the lamb or the goat consumed before dawn, kicking off the day of Unleavened Bread. 12-hour cycle of daylight, 12-hour cycle of night, and so on. Unleavened Bread 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then the wave sheaf, or the Unleavened Bread, this particular year ends Saturday morning at dawn. And then the Sabbath would begin, I should say. There's no servile work that day, but people have all week to gather their first fruit wave sheaf offering, and then they would bring it to the priest Sunday morning, also known as the first day of the week, and they would offer it according to the statute that the wave sheaf offering must be given the day after the Sabbath. I hope that makes sense. So like I say, I just wanted to make these changes and show you guys how everything fits and what it would look like. But again, I still believe that the wave sheaf offering on the lunar calendar would have been the morning of the 7th of April. Pretty early. You can see how all of these, or how both the calendars differ, you know. And here, this is the calendar that I've been using. It's within 11 to 15 minutes from time and dates website. They got an excellent website there that you can use. I use their duration calendar all the time. And that's all you have to do is just type in the Google Hebrew calendar 3 BC, and then you'll see the CGF or CGSF.org. And like I say, the equinox is within, 11 to 15 minutes of time and date. Because I can't get past 00 at time and date for the equinox and everything. So I found this website, and it's actually very accurate, even with the moon cycles. And it gives you the Hebrew calendar on the left, and it's superimposed on the Gregorian calendar on the right. I mean, it's an excellent tool to use, and I Hope you guys find it useful as well. And then here's just a couple the scriptures that shows us the course of Abijah. It's the same thing as Abijah over here in Chronicles 24. These are all the priestly courses on the right to show you how Zacharias was in charge of this one, the 8th one, how it fell on the lunar calendar that year. He would have had to attend to help out with Shavuot because they'd bring in their wheat harvest then and offer up their first fruits on that first day of the week, or Sunday as we know it. And then he would have been, after he fulfilled his priestly courses, that's probably when he came out of the temple dumb. And he returned that next day to Hebron, right? And possibly conceived John that very day. The reason why I look at the 27th so hard is because by using time and date in the duration calendar, going from that day of John's conception, using his 6 months from this day, from his conception to his 6 months, we know that when Mary told Elizabeth that she was pregnant and that she would indeed conceive the Mashiach, and Elizabeth believed on her, all of a sudden she received the Ruach HaKodesh, as well as John the Baptist, her son, her not yet born son, in the womb, and the baby leapt with joy, completely understanding. And it said in, I believe, Luke, again, that when the babe was even born, that he was even able to speak. And the people marveled over his, they wonder what kind of babe this is, you know. They may even thought that he was the Mashiach, the promised one. But I say again, you know, these two were both born under the same stars. And, you know, promised by Isaiah and Yahuwah. And this all just makes sense. And if you look at the death of Herod right around this region and the blood moon, everything fits so just almost perfectly. It's amazing. All I had to do was learn about the calendar of Melchizedek. And then I started looking into all this, and then it just all fell right in line, you know, with Jack Finnegan's Book of Chronology. He has all those arguments in there. He compares all the arguments and he finds the best fit for it. And you just find that type of information and you extrapolate it. You process all of it. You put it all together. And this is what I come up with. And like I say, it's, you know, I don't claim to be a very smart person. But all I'm saying is, praise Yahuwah. I'm actually really thrilled I'm able to find this, and you know, I hope I keep finding more, because this stuff is amazing. And what I've found is a lot of it's completely contrary to what I was taught in church. And to think about it, when I reflect back on it, you know, this actually wasn't that hard to find. They gave us the course. We have an approximate time. I would be so bold to say is I'm probably within a week. You know, how long does it take a man to walk 13 miles? You know, he might have started out early in the morning. He might have had a mule or an ass. You know, he probably rode it. He was probably back home at noon the next day, you know. like I say, that's just an assumption on my part, though. I can't prove that. It just makes sense that, I think I could walk 13 miles in a day. I'm not in the greatest of shape either, but, they didn't have vehicles back then, and that's basically all they ever did was walk. Or ride a mule or an ass, So this is just basically a common sense study, and I'm just trying to put it all together. So again, you guys are more than welcome to take screenshots of this and use this in your own studies if you wish. I mean, iron sharpens iron, and if we can get closer to what the ministry actually looked like, in which I believe it was a year, Yahusha proclaimed the year of Adonai. It doesn't say years on May 14th when he came out of the wilderness. Just these little things that I keep finding. I mean, any comments or opinions, leave them below. Thanks and have a good day. Let's see if I can